Hey guys, how's it going? It's Al. Week 1 is fast approaching. We're about 4.5 weeks away from kickoff in the NFL for 2020 fantasy football season, and I have a Week 1 NFL DraftKings look for you here. We're going to take an in-depth look at all the running backs on the Week 1 slate at their DraftKings prices. Some people ask me, what do I do in terms of tournaments versus what do I do in terms of cash games? Cash games being defined as anything, to me, being defined as anything that pays out over 33% of the prize pool. So triple ups, double ups, 50-50s, head-to-head games. Tournaments pay 25% and down. GPPs pay 25% down. So like my philosophy for those types of payouts, when I only have to beat half the field versus when I have to beat 80% of the field, or to really get the money, beat 99.9% of the field to get some big time multipliers on your entry fee, your philosophy is going to change. It's going to be a little bit different in how you select these players. So in cash games, tournaments, in cash games, I'm not really concerned about what players' ownership is. In tournaments, I'm much more in tune with what ownerships project to be and what my total ownership is. And am I going to take a player because he's highly owned or not? Sometimes it's a binary decision. We'll get into that over the course of a bunch of different videos as the season goes on, but we're going to just look specifically at running backs for Week 1. If you're new to the channel, please do me a favor. Subscribe to the channel, ring that notifications bell, drop a like on this video. I want you to do one thing for me, and that's reply to this video down below. And I want you to let me know which running back, not named Christian McCaffrey and not named Miles Sanders, you think is the best running back for Week 1. Because those two guys, based on the pricing and based on their skill set and usage and matchup, clearly look like the top two options for Week 1 on DraftKings. Christian McCaffrey, every week, just click the damn button, right? Right there, it says draft player. It's an easy game. You put them in your lineup, you get 30 points, you let your opponent figure out where they're going to get them from. Now, I understand that there are differences this year. Ron Rivera, not the head coach anymore, different offense. McCaffrey not going to handle 99% of the running back snaps, but I don't think he's going to handle 60% of the running back snaps either. So, like, he could still do what he's done the previous years with 90% of the snaps. You have to lean on this dude if you're the Panthers. Yes, his price is way far above everybody else, but based on the pricing that we've seen for Week 1 and based on what I think is going to happen with the current world situation and COVID-19 and everything else and players being reported out up to 90 minutes before lock. They don't have to let you know if a player tests positive on Friday. The teams can keep that to themselves for gamesmanship purposes and not release that until 90 minutes before lock. So I think that 2020 is going to play differently in terms of NFL than in any year prior. It's going to be more like daily fantasy NBA. And if you played NBA, you know what type of hectic nature that can be right before lock with players being in and out. At least we have 90 minutes, but I feel like there's going to be more scrambling and more tinkering when we get to those last hour and a half before kickoff every single week of the 2020 season than any season before. That being said, I think there's going to be enough value plays on the board for us to comfortably fit Christian McCaffrey for Week 1. He is your best option. You don't need me to go much further than that. 2,100 less than him starts the next tier in pricing. Josh Jacobs ends that tier at about 6,800 going up against Carolina, whose defense is going to be not good this year, and we're going to be streaming running backs and wide receivers and quarterbacks against them pretty much all the time. But as I said before, Miles Sanders at 6,300, I believe he's the RB10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He is the 10th highest priced running back on this slate on DraftKings. And judging by a few things. One, you either believe coach speak or you don't. I think that it's team dependent. There are certain coaches that I believe. There are certain coaches that I don't. Fine. Miles Sanders doesn't need 30 touches for him to smash. Now, if he gets between 20 and 25, based on how good a pass catcher he is, he's going to be extremely viable. And that's what he was down the stretch. 20 touches here in 20 carries here in week 16, 5 catches, 19-6, 15-4, 26 points, 38 points, 21 points here with 17-5. If that's going to be his usage, 20 to 25 touches a week with 4 to 6 of those coming in the passing game, 6,300 is the cheapest that we're going to see Miles Sanders probably for this entire 2020 season. This is a $7,000 to $7,800 running back, in my opinion. based on what I believe his usage is going to be in this offense. I don't think he's going to get Christian McCaffrey usage. I don't think he's going to get 25 to 30 touches a week. I think that there could be some variance from one week to the next, where some weeks he's going to see 15, the next he's going to see 24. But his involvement in the passing game, which stayed steady through all of these weeks, regardless of what his rushing totals were. 5 targets, 6 targets, 6, 5, 5, 5. Extremely consistent in the passing game in DraftKings full PPR. Miles Sanders' 6,300 is just too cheap. I think he's going to be the highest owned running back on the slate. As I said, this next price tier, not the next tier of talent, but the next price tier. Dalvin Cook going up against Green Bay, who struggled against running backs last year, and his involvement in the passing game. If he does not hold out, I have to say that because we're 4.5 weeks before the season, and there's a possibility that he just needs to go through camp and then hold out for whatever he wants for a few weeks to try and force the team's hand. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's certainly on the table. It's something we just need to be aware of. If he's out, then Madison becomes a stud play in the mid 4K range, and he'll be owned by everybody. It'll be him, Sanders, and probably McCaffrey will be everybody's 3 running backs. Now, my key for running back is to try my best to get 65 to 70 touches out of the 2 running back spots in flex for my cash game teams. Okay? And we defined what those were before. So Christian McCaffrey gets you 25 every week. If we think that Sanders is going to get 20, that puts us at 45. We need to find another 25, and then we're going to fill in wide receivers that are cheap enough for us. And finding running backs that have the ability to have some usage in the passing game makes players like Alvin Kamara. Dalvin Cook's passing game usage really exploded last year versus the years prior. Alvin Kamara, very used in this passing game, especially in games against Tampa Bay, who limits your ability to run the football. 10 targets in week 11 against Tampa Bay last year. And we know how much Drew Brees' and that offense's efficiency spikes when they play in New Orleans versus when they play on the road, and all the easy dump-offs that he should theoretically see in week 1. Austin Eckler, I think that this team is going to play slower than most kind of believe. It's not going to be the same pace of play with Tyrod Taylor at quarterback versus when they had Phillip Rivers at quarterback. This is a stud defense with difference makers at all 3 levels, the line, linebacker, and in the defensive backfield. I think that they're going to do what they can to kind of play slow, or as slow as they possibly can. And I don't know that there's going to be as many dump-offs to Austin Eckler as there were before. I think, though, we are still looking at 17 to 20 touches a week, with maybe 5 of those coming in the passing game. 12, 13 carries, 5 catches for Austin Eckler. As I said, that gives him a tremendous floor. 6 catches is essentially a touchdown in full PPR. And knowing that you can count on that with Eckler at 7,000 against Cincinnati, who struggled last year against the position, even though I think they're going to play slower, if you think that they're going to play from behind, and there's a lot of people that think that Joe Burrow is going to be the deal this year. He certainly has weapons around him in AJ Green and Boyd and Mixon and everybody else on that offense for him to thrive. If that offense can put up numbers and the Chargers are playing from behind instead of playing from ahead, we're not going to see them have to slow the ball down. And then those are games where they're playing with a negative game script that Eckler can really shine. Aaron Jones is somebody I believe is going to regress a little bit this year. 23 touchdowns is a lot. I don't know if we're going to see him do that again. It's a lot of touchdowns. And they drafted A.J. Dillon. And they've still got Williams. I love Aaron Jones' talent. I don't love him on the road at Minnesota, knowing that he's probably not going to score 23 touchdowns again. But if his role is similar to what it was last year, then he's fine at 6,900. He's fine for tournaments, but not somebody I'm going to be rostering in cash games. I'm going to have to consider that more as the season gets closer, as we get closer to week 1, but he's probably not somebody I'm hanging my hat on. Joe Mixon, as I said before, really tough defense here for the Chargers, even though we've got that green 24 here. He is at home. They should be a more dynamic offense this year with their quarterback play with Joe Burrow under center as opposed to what they had last year. Nick Chubb, Probably not going to be investing in Nick Chubb in week one of the best runners of the football that exists in the league right now, but playing as a 9-point underdog in Baltimore, one of the best defenses in the league, and a team that can pile up points on offense. If the Browns get behind, which everybody kind of feels that they're going to get behind, I don't see the path to 20 touches for Nick Chubb. And in the games where Kareem Hunt was out, beginning of the season, first half of the season, 4 targets, 7 targets, 4 targets. I'm 100% on board with Nick Chubb if that's his usage in the passing game. But you look at the second half of the season, after Kareem Hunt came back, 3 targets, 1. 2 targets, 3 targets, 1. It's just not his role. They're going to pound the ball with Nick Chubb, and he is a very, very good runner of the football. But if they're going to be playing from behind, I don't know that we can trust Nick Chubb against a great defense on the road and a big underdog. He looks like an absolute fade for me. So does Kenyon Drake. As much as I love Kenyon Drake this year in season long, and I have him ranked higher at running back for the course of the entire season, in week one, he's somebody else who's a very, very possible fade for me based on the defense that they're playing against. I'm not thrilled to run any running back up against that San Francisco defense, especially not when they're playing at home. Carson, if you want to go up against Atlanta, he's not going to have very much involvement in the passing game. He's going to have to score touchdowns, and they're going to have to come away from Metcalf and Lockett and Russ throwing them the ball. They do want to feed Carson the ball. I need them to be favored and at home to really want to roster him. But as a tournament game stack here, having shares of somebody with the touchdown rate that he has is not terrible, but I'm not expecting 100 yards rushing on the ground, and you're not going to get very much help at all through the air. Are you buying Gurley or are you not buying Gurley on this Atlanta Falcons team? I'm in full-on wait and see mode, and I usually advocate against being on wait and see mode. I don't know how they're going to utilize Todd Gurley. I don't know if they're going to give him 20 carries a week on the ground. I don't know if they're going to throw him the ball 4 or 5 times either. I just don't. And I always advocate on the side of when you don't know, it's okay to say, I don't know. Even if you're producing content, you don't have to take a side if you don't have any evidence to back up that side just for the sake of taking a side. So that leaves me in this weird middle ground with Todd Gurley. And if I'm in that weird middle ground, I'm probably going to fade him because I can't say definitively one way or the other what's going to happen. And sprinkling in just a little bit for me is probably not the way that I'm going to go. I probably won't have any shares of Todd Gurley outside of game stacks of this game. And I do think that game stacks of this game are going to be very attractive to players in week one. It might be a popular game stack considering that it's the highest total with the closest spread, a 1-point spread and a 49.5 point total on this game right now as of DraftKings Sportsbook on the 12th of August. So if Todd Gurley runs for 1 touchdown, catches 4 balls, and has 90 yards on the ground, he becomes extremely viable at that price point. James White, not really buying for GPP, even at 6,000. Leonard Fournette at home, again, should have more touchdowns this year than he had last year, only ending up with 3 with the amount of carries that he had and the amount of inside the 5 and inside the 10 carries that he had. But is he going to have this same usage in the passing game this year versus last? And I kind of think that his usage in the passing game is going to go down with the bodies that they brought in on offense and the new coaching staff. I just don't see him carrying that many targets and catching this many balls, which is really what kept him afloat at his price last season, was the massively elevated usage in the passing game. I just don't think that that's going to sustain itself this year. Now, if it does, I'll be wrong and he'll be a great DraftKings play at his price point, but I'd much rather roster somebody like David Montgomery going into his second year, which with the amount of usage that he is going to get on this Bears offense, going against a Detroit defense that kind of ebbs and flows. Raheem Mostert, same idea. The issue with him on DraftKings is that you're not going to get any usage in the passing game. He's 5,800 playing against an at-home favored in a game that they should be in running game scripts. They should be playing from ahead. When Mostert touches the ball a ton of times, and he is their lead back right now, he's going to get the ball around the goal line. He's going to get the ball between the 20s. Yes, they're going to sprinkle in guys like Coleman and the other running backs that they have on this team, but he should get the lion's share. You don't have to pay $7,500 for him, which would be a massive detriment to me. Yes, there's risk because of his lack of involvement in the passing game. So he's a boomer bust candidate for me that's a little bit dependent on touchdowns, but on an offense that can move the ball, should be able to see elevated plays in week 1 because of the matchup against Arizona, and give him the ball around the goal line. 15 touchdowns, nothing to sneeze at when that's repeatable. You know, at least his usage would be repeatable on the team that he's on. Mark Ingram, 5,500. Again, if they get out to a lead, Mark Ingram to me makes a great tournament play at 5,500 because of the boom and bust nature of what he can do. 4 points, 17, 23, 10, 8, 27, 23, 9. Not somebody I'm going to want to plug into cash games, right? His involvement in the pass game is spotty. They don't ask their running backs to run a lot of routes. He is a good pass catcher, right? Make no mistake. He is a plus in the passing game. But the way this offense runs, he catches leak outs. Maybe they throw him a screen, but it's not all that often because they don't need to relieve pressure because Lamar's not a drop back passer. They don't need to do things like run screen plays to relieve pressure on the quarterback. Their offense, as it's run, relieves pressure on the quarterback. So those easy points aren't there. He also never carried the ball 20 times last year, 19 being his highest against Pittsburgh. A lot of his value is tied up in touchdowns, and that's what makes him a tournament-only boomer bust play for me again here in week 1. Now we're getting down into the value plays. Singletary fighting for goal line carries with the rookie that they brought in and his quarterback, Allen, one of the best inside the 5 rushers in the league the last 2 seasons. I like Singletary's talent. I like him for season long. I think he's going to get enough volume to pay his ADP price off in season long, but on a week-to-week basis, he's going to have to bust some big ones for me on DraftKings because of Zach Moss's presence, because of touchdowns getting usurped by not 1 but 2 other possible vultures around the goal line. This Jets team is a mess, though. And it's very realistic to see him touch the ball 20 times in week 1 for 5,400. I would prefer him as a cash game play to Mark Ingram if you need the salary and he's your last man in at running back. But for me, I would probably prefer to have Kareem Hunt based on his involvement in the pass game and consistency in this Browns offense, especially when they're in negative game scripts like they should be in week 1 against Baltimore. He should see more snaps, won't see a ton of carries, but his involvement in the passing game is what's going to buoy him. As the RB2 in Cleveland last year, averaged 12.7 DraftKings points per game for 5.1 in salary in week 1 in a game where you really have to believe that there's going to be a lot of passing game scripts for these Cleveland Browns. Coming down to the sub 5K range, Tariq Cohen, very similar to me to Kareem Hunt, but without the ability to rush the football as good as Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt is a guy that can carry it 20 times a game. Tariq Cohen's not. So very similar as a pass catcher, but dissimilar in the fact that he's never going to get an inside the 5 carry. So your touchdown upside is very muted. Boston Scott, same thing goes for Boston Scott to me as goes for Tariq Cohen. He's a tournament flyer only. Not really somebody that I want to hang my hat on or have really heavy allocations to. The running back situation in New England is still up for grabs. We don't know who it's going to be. Obviously, watch this as the season gets closer. Sony Michel should be out. James White only involved in the passing game and way too elevated a price point for me for what he does, especially on the goal line. And as siloed as that running back situation is in New England every year, everybody has a specific job, and James White's job is not to touch the ball when they get inside the 5 or the 10-yard line. But watch out for Damian Harris at 4,300. If he is named the starter in week 1, he will be one of the highest owned players on the slate for New England. If he can wrest this job away from the other options that they have in Rex Burkhead, and they just sign somebody as well, if he can hold on to this job through camp, then he's going to be extremely, extremely, extremely interesting for week 1 at 4,300. There's a couple of other value plays. I mentioned one, or possible value plays, I should say. Kerryon Johnson, everybody's interested in Swift, but if Johnson holds on to this job, he's been efficient when he's gotten touches. And they said the rookie is a little bit behind, as most rookies are early in the season, and we'll see what they can do. If Johnson is the guy that projects to get 15 plus touches at 4,400, he looks like a value to me. Zach Moss is touchdown only, not really interested there. We're not going to play Latavius Murray unless Alvin Kamara is out for any sort of week. In the weeks that Kamara was out last year, he was an absolute monster. So we're going to be on the lookout for that. Probably not going to happen week 1, but in the case that it happens throughout this season, that's where we're going to be hanging our hat. And the last one to look at is the Washington football team issue with Darius Geis being released. Adrian Peterson should be the 1 and 2 down guy, but has no involvement in the passing game and has never really shown that much talent in the passing game, as good as a runner, a Hall of Fame runner that he's been over the course of his career. So you've got the rookie Gibson sitting behind him, and he's a very talented, very athletic pass catcher. Antonio Gibson probably is not going to be the starter, but he's playing for Ron Rivera, who has utilized pass catching running backs in the past. And I'm not saying that he is going to be Christian McCaffrey. I'm not saying he's going to get anything close to the usage that Christian McCaffrey had. But assuming that this is a team that should be playing from behind a ton, and you have a player in front of him in Peterson who does not play well in negative game scripts. He's not somebody you could, well, let's just keep handing the ball off to AP while we're down 14 points. Antonio Gibson, with the pass catchers that they have on this team, outside of Terry McLaurin, who, if you've watched any of my videos, you know my feelings about Terry McLaurin. He is a great pass catcher that I expect to explode this year. There's nobody really else on this team that's going to command a large market share of targets, and it's not out of the realm of possibility that Antonio Gibson could end the season as their number 3 target guy on this Washington football team. If that's the case, I think that he has a very realistic outcome of Tariq Cohen rookie year type numbers, which on a week-to-week basis, if you think they're going to be in negative game scripts and having to throw the football and running Antonio Gibson out there as the running back in the backfield, or they're going to be utilizing him in the slot, which is something we don't know for sure if they're going to do without preseason games this year, 4,000 is just too cheap. And he has game-breaking speed running under a 4.40 at the combine. He's somebody that can certainly make a difference in your tournament lineups if we know what carved out role he's going to have. And like I said, the comp for me is statistically is rookie year Tariq Cohen. And that ain't that bad. That's somebody who won GPPs for people a couple of years ago. So he's somebody for you to stash away and keep in mind. Thank you guys for joining. I appreciate y'all being here. Drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. Ring that notifications bell if you wouldn't mind too much. And go check out one more video. I'll be right there. Bye.
He's a legend.